जिंदगी के सफर में गुजर जाते हैं जो मकाम वो फिर नहीं आते वो फिर नहीं आते जिंदगी के सफर में गुजर जाते हैं जो मकाम वो फिर नहीं आते वो फिर नहीं आते
I always really enjoyed spending time with my Nana. It was always so much fun to talk to him, and he always gave the greatest advice. I still remember some of the stuff he told me, and I will never forget it. I would enjoy doing anything with him. Even if we were just playing a board game or watching a movie together, it was always nice. Sometimes when my friends came over, we would just play Xbox, and he would sit there and talk to us, or just watch us while we played, and sometimes join us for a game of cards. And he was a big reason of why I came back to Karachi so often, and Karachi will not be the same for me without him. But I'll always miss him, and I will never forget him.
This is Abida from Toronto. When I think of Mahdi Masud, the words that come to mind are deeply patriotic, ethical, quintessential diplomat. But when I think of my dearest Phopajan, what comes to mind? A true gentleman, always impeccably dressed, with a wicked and a very unique sense of humor. One of my earliest memories as a child is of the day I discovered that Phopajan always carried a toothbrush and had to brush after every meal, even if not home. It was while on a trip to Kuwait after dinner at someone's house. I needed to wash my hands, and he accompanied me, showed me the way to the bathroom, and magically pulled out his brush and toothpaste. It was quite an eye-opening revelation. Phopajan always held my attention with his skillful storytelling. He was also very masterful at leg pulling with a very straight, completely poker face. And my favorite moment was catching him break into a smile with a twinkle in his eye and his signature chuckle upon successfully unnerving his latest victim, unsuspecting victim. But by far the most memorable moments were sharing jokes around the dinner table at Phopajan's place, especially ones at the expense of the English language. Why do we argue? But we are not Wagyu, and we don't live in the Hague. And the usual, why is PUT put but BUT but, and you get the gist. Post-marriage, it was Kamar who benefited from Phopajan's wealth of knowledge. The historian and my husband loved to pick Phopajan's brain and delve into past history. He always looked forward to the deep and meaningful conversations they shared, and after our move to Canada, continued to miss gaining insight and getting Phopajan's perspective on all things global, political, current and foreign affairs. He was always looking on the lookout for any published articles and any TV appearances Phopajan made, and made it a point to share them with me. Phopajan, you are deeply missed.
मेहदी मसूद साहब मेरा ख्याल है वो वाहिद डिप्लोमेट थे कि जब वो रिटायर होके पाकिस्तान आए हैं तो उनके पास रहने के लिए जगह नहीं। इससे बड़ा सबूत उनकी ईमानदारी और उनकी नेकी और उनकी इंटेग्रिटी का नहीं हो सकता कि वो घर आएँ और उनके पास कोई रहने के लिए जगह ना हो। इसके अलावा उनमें बहुत सी खसूसियात थीं। सेंस ऑफ ह्यूमर गज़ब की थी। याददाश्त ऐसी थी कि अगर कोई 70 बंद का मरसिया हो तो वो इत्मीनान से पढ़ के सुना देते थे बग़ैर एक दफ़ा झिझके। और सेंस ऑफ ह्यूमर का ये हाल था कि हर मौके और हर महफिल के लिए उनके पास एक कोई ना कोई जोक ज़रूर मौजूद रहता था और बाज़ दफ़ा रिपीट भी करते थे, लेकिन जी चाहता था कि उस पर हंसें। और इसके अलावा पाकिस्तान की नुमाइंदगी जो उन्होंने बाहर की, मेरा ख़्याल है बहुत कम लोगों ने इतनी ईमानदारी से अपने मुल्क के मुताल्लिक़ दुनिया को बताया होगा जितना उन्होंने, क्योंकि वो पाकिस्तान पे जान दे सकते थे। और यही चीज़ मुझ में और उनमें बहुत कॉमन थी कि हम लोग पाकिस्तान की बुराई किसी से सुन नहीं सकते थे, पाकिस्तान की बुराई देख भी नहीं सकते थे, ये हद थी। तो और हमेशा ये रहता था कि नहीं सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा, क्योंकि बहुत वो भी और मैं भी, हम लोग दोनों पार्टीशन में शरीक थे और हमने देखा था, कायद आज़म को भी देखा था। और इसके अलावा उन्होंने जिस किस्म की ज़िंदगी गुजारी, वो उसमें इतनी सादगी, इतना यानी वो जो कुछ दे सकते थे अपनी जान से पाकिस्तान को, वो उन्होंने दिया। और मेरी उनकी मुलाकात अक्सर शरूबी के यहाँ होती थी, क्योंकि इतवार की दोपहर को उसके यहाँ खाना होता है, तो वो उस पर अक्सर आ जाते थे। बाद में कमज़ोर हो गए थे तो नहीं आते थे इतने ज़्यादा, लेकिन उनकी कमी बहुत महसूस होती थी। और मेरे लिए वो एक ना सिर्फ ये कि इंटेलेक्चुअली एक बहुत ऊंचा दर्जा रखते थे, और बल्कि एक तरीक़े से वो मेरे मेंटर थे, क्योंकि मुझे अच्छा लगता था अगर कोई शेर मुझे याद ना हो तो मैं फ़ौरन उनसे पूछ लेती थी कि पहला मिसरा ये है, उसका दूसरा क्या है, और वो फ़ौरन बता देते थे। तो इस चीज़ से मुझे इतना इत्मीनान होता था कि कोई है कि जो मुझे बता सकेगा ये सब कुछ। और we were both very fond of each other, and he was the type of person who wherever he was always the center of attraction. वो शमे महफिल बन जाते थे जहाँ भी जाते थे। और पहनने ओढ़ने का बहुत ख्याल था, टाई बिल्कुल सही हो, कॉलर बिल्कुल सही हो, और बाल एक इधर से उधर ना हुआ हुआ हो, ये चीज़ें सब बहुत थी। लेकिन पाकिस्तान की यानी लॉयल्टी टू द कंट्री वाज हैड नो लिमिट। सो मैं यही कहूँगी कि अल्लाह मियाँ जहाँ पे भी हैं ममन भाई, वो अपने जैसे लोगों के दरमियान जोक सुना रहे हों, शेर सुना रहे हों और खुश हों, और खुदा करे निगार से उनकी मुलाकात हो जाए जो उनकी बेहद चहीती बीवी थी।
It is hard to believe that Maman Bhai is not anymore with us. His memories are still fresh and will always be. As a matter of fact, we have spent almost 7 years together with Maman Bhai and Nigar Baji in Kuwait. Maman Bhai was a strong family man, full of love, kindness and consideration. Among all other things, I especially enjoyed his wit and high sense and great sense of humor. Maman Bhai and Nigar Baji, they are missed by us very much, and they both are very close to our hearts. May Allah bless their souls.
Dearest Abbas, dearest Zevi, just a few words that I feel about my most beloved Maman Bhai, who I miss every day, who's been a major influence in my life, because most people don't know, but he stayed with us for 2 years in Pindi in the early 1960s, so I used to see him every day, and a lot of what I have gone on to achieve in my life, good or bad, has been due in no small measure to all the conversations I had with him to all the influences that he had upon me. He was a man of so many parts. He was a man of extreme decency, extreme integrity, and of course, extreme knowledge. And no greater patriot, I think, has walked the sands of Pakistan. And no one had a greater memory for jokes, anecdotes, some of which I remember very well and I still recount amongst friends because they're just stuck in my mind. He really was a unique man. No one had a greater memory for jokes, anecdotes, some of which I remember very well and I still recount amongst friends because they're just stuck in my mind. He really was a unique man, absolutely wonderful and so caring and so affectionate. And, you know, my children will bear this out because we had the good fortune of seeing him quite regularly before he passed away. And Alize, my dearest daughter, is with me. She'd like to say a few words.
We remember and miss our darling Maman Bhai so much. I just remember that he was so affectionate, so kind, so caring, always, you know, there for the good times and the bad. You know, I remember that very clearly. It was the last few years of his life, even when my daughter was born, whether it was her birthday, whether it was, you know, Eid, anything, so warm and gentle with the children and all of us. So that's how we remember him, and we miss him dearly. And we were so blessed to have him in our lives. And we love you, Maman Bhai. I'm sure you're happy, very, very happy and at peace wherever you are. We love you.
God bless you, Abbas. God bless you, Zebi. And God bless all your children.
Of Mr. Mahdi Masud Barsi, I've been asked to remember long friendship and long association I had with him from early days in America. I was lucky to have made Mr. Mahdi Masood's acquaintance in USA when I was a student, and he was a brilliant diplomat at the Pakistan Embassy. He went on to become ambassador to various countries in his long diplomatic career. A highly educated man, full of wit, an unmatchable memory, and impeccable character and integrity throughout his life. In short, he was the most upright and straightforward person I came across in life. I wish there were more Pakistanis like him to contribute their best for Pakistan.
Like all of you, I'm thinking about our dear Abba Jan today, and I'm also missing our beloved mummy. To me, Abba Jan was this rare individual who through his life had accomplished so many things, yet was also so approachable. I remember Abba Jan for his humor, his wit, his intelligence, but also his kind and gentle soul. I remember many, many times being with Abba Jan, always infused with some kind of humor, a lot of love, and just a close kinship. I really do miss him. I miss you, Abba Jan, and I miss you, Mummy.
In memory of Mahdi Masud by Amna Khan. There goes a man who lived this life in dignity, with old school mannerisms and a hint of formality, impeccable clothes and glistening shoes, a penchant for poetry and humorous anecdotes, kept many an audience riveted and on their toes, for unexpectedly these words may pose brand new insights as yet untold, delivered in kindness to gladden the soul.
आदाब, सलाम्स एवरीवन। यकीन नहीं आ रहा 2 साल गुजर गए हैं मम्मन भाई को गए हुए। मम्मन भाई, वी मिस यू, वी लव यू। निगार बाजी, आप और मम्मन भाई, thank you. We want to thank you for making a life so beautiful, so wholesome. We miss you so much. You are in our hearts and live there forever. तो आप हमारे पास ही हैं. And ममन भाई, आपका क्या कहें? You are a great man in every way. And you will always be remembered as such by everyone. And the world is a much lesser place without you and Nigar Baji. We love you. You're adorable. And you are our lives. And thank you for everything, for all the beautiful memories which are still so alive. Adab Nigar Baji, Adab Maman Bhai.
Anis and I, we feel very privileged to have been asked by Abbas and Zebi to say a few words about our dearest Maman Bhai on this special occasion of his second birthday. Frankly, to talk for a few minutes about a man larger than life is impossible, and I would have asked for a never-ending time allocation, but let me try. My first reflection of Maman Bhai goes back to the earliest days of my foreign service career. As new entrants to the diplomatic service, we were informed of the names of the shining stars of the service. Mr. Mahdi Masud was obviously one of them, and why not? Having secured first position in the All Pakistan, East Pakistan, West Pakistan Combined Superior Services Examination, diplomat extraordinaire, and a man of matchless competence, decency, dignity, honesty, and integrity. What a nervous moment it was for me to meet him as the uncle of my then fiancée, now wife Anis. I was to be in my best behavior and in a smart turnout to impress the uncle ambassador. I was meeting a living legend in person, and that too in a family environment. But see the greatness of this man. Within minutes, he had switched seamlessly from Ambassador Mahdi Masud to Maman Bhai for me, thus making me relaxed and comfortable in such a distinguished company. When we were on our first posting in New York, we learned the good news of the assignment of Mr. Mahdi Masud as Deputy Permanent Representative to the Pakistan mission to the United Nations. We were thrilled at the prospect of being together with Maman Bhai and Nigar Baji for a few years in New York. The professional mentorship I received from him was invaluable to my career, and the personal relationships established with him, with his graceful and charming wife, our dearest Nigar Baji, and his two wonderful children, Abbas and Zebi, have been the most precious and lasting relationships of our life. Ambassador Mahdi Masud was a patriot. Today, this sacred word is thrown around so casually. But if one needs to learn about the true meaning of the word, they should learn it from Ambassador Masud. Yeah. Whenever the Pakistan flag flew in his home, his office and his car, throughout his career, it flew high at maximum pride to truly reflect the honor, dignity and dedication of the person flying it. One example of his patriotism stands out so vividly. During the 1971 East Pakistan crisis, Maman Bhai voluntarily reduced his rental ceiling in New York, very quietly, devoid of any projection and publicity. Such a gesture was unheard of then and is unheard of now. When asked why did he do it, his response was simple: "My country is struggling, I must do my part." Ambassador Mahdi Masud was an intellectual. Even after the completion of his official diplomatic service, he spent his life writing and speaking to share his knowledge and experience with the lesser ones like us. He communicated his thoughts with candor, without fear, but with decency and decorum. He never invited controversy despite covering highly sensitive issues. This is so rare, and when one sees the screaming and shouting on political TV shows today, we wonder if Maman Bhai was there to bring sense and sanity. Mahdi Masud was an all-rounder. For someone so focused on duty and country, one would have thought his attention will be restricted to his sarkari obligations. But no, he had time for movies and sports, besides being an avid reader, finishing books after books. Sports was a passion for him. He followed all sports events religiously. He had his favorite teams and players not only in cricket, hockey and tennis, but in all games: soccer, ice hockey, American football, baseball, you name it.
Basketball.
Maman Bhai's wit and humor was unparalleled. He had the ability to connect with anyone and everyone. Anis and the children still recall and share jokes narrated by Maman Bhai. They have fond memories of our trip to Brussels. Maman Bhai's knowledge of history and diplomacy made it one of the most memorable trips. Nigar Baji's proverbial hospitality contributed to it significantly. Maman Bhai and Nigar Baji insisted that we touch and rub the statue in Grand Place to ensure our return to Brussels. Lo and behold, 10 years later, following in the footsteps of Maman Bhai, I had the honor of representing Pakistan in the Kingdom of Belgium. Ambassador Mahdi Masud was a gentleman with a touch of class. He never felt the need to demonstrate his official status to command respect. His pleasing personality and sharafat earned him spontaneous respect and deference. He showed exceptional courtesy even to his juniors, whom he always referred to as Saab, like Shamshad Saab, Sheikh Saab, Fatmi Saab. Maman Bhai was the pinnacle of diplomatic etiquette, using precision, prudence and charm in everything from global conflict to grand banquets. In both his official and personal relationships, he afforded utmost respect and kindness to all, young and old, and from every walk of life. Ambassador Saab, you were my mentor. My uncle, my senior, and my friend. To me, to your niece, my wife, to my children, to the family and to the world, you are a legend. Your life partner was your equal. Nigar Baji was grace personified, and you both complemented each other in extraordinary ways. We miss you both dearly. We hope that those of us who are beneficiaries of your grace, intellect and generosity can continue to fill your hearts with pride. And it is abundantly clear that you have passed your values to Abbas and Zebi, and that is the best and the most valuable legacy one can leave behind in this world. Maman Bhai, आप बहुत याद आते हैं. We miss you dearly.
मेरा नाम अनवर मकसूद है और मुझे मेहंदी साहब के बारे में कुछ कहना है. मेहंदी साहब हमारी नज़रों से तो दूर हैं, मगर हमारे दिलों से दूर नहीं है. एक बहुत पढ़े लिखे, तहजीब तमीज़ का दामन जो उन्होंने थामा था, वो आखिरी वक्त तक थामे रहे. मैंने कभी उनको ऊंचा बोलते, किसी को डांटते, किसी की बुराई करते नहीं सुना. तो पूरा ख़ानदान ही ऐसा है. और दूसरे मुल्कों में भी रहे, हमारे सफ़ीर भी रहे, मगर जब मुझसे मिलते थे तो मुझे अनवर भाई कहते थे या अनवर साहब कहते थे. मैंने कहा कि ये आप मत कहा के. बोले नहीं, मैं आपके प्रोग्राम देखता हूँ, इस वजह से मजबूरन मुझे कहना पड़ता है. मैंने कहा मैं भी आपके प्रोग्राम देखता हूँ, बहुत अच्छा बोलते हैं आप जानते बहुत हैं. हमारा सिलसिला दोस्ती का भी था, एक बुजुर्गी का था, मुझसे बड़े थे और मैं तो पूरे ख़ानदान की इज़्ज़त करता हूँ. अब्बास मेरे बेटों की तरह है। तो मेहदी साहब हमेशा हमारे साथ रहेंगे। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asif Hassan, and my Mamu Sayyid Mahdi Masud passed away 2 years back on this date, 19 June 2018. Today it's his second birthday, and what can I say about him? He was really an exceptional person, a career diplomat, connoisseur of poetry and literature, a storyteller par excellence, and he had a treasure trove of stories, humorous incidents for every occasion. And of course, throughout his career, he was in places where he met people in high positions, but he was exceptional because in his heart, at heart, he was such a simple person. He had no love for material things, and his total focus, and that is what he used to say often, is that to live a successful life, one has to have compassion and feeling for another person, for another human being. To put yourself in another's position and feel his sorrow and his hurt and try to do whatever you can for him. And this was such a sort of, in his position, being a career diplomat and meeting such important persons, that this was a strange sort of dichotomy, but he lived true to what he felt, to his conviction, and he was throughout his life he tried to do for others, to care for others and not be a burden on anybody. And what can I say for his children Zainab and Abbas? Because he's left a legacy which is in many ways quite simple, and it is to have compassion for other human beings, to put yourself back. That's what he used to say. That is where true happiness lies. Whenever you try to put yourself forward and see things for your benefit first, you can never live a successful life. And a successful life, not in terms of material things, but in terms of true happiness. Wishing all the best for you, Zainab and Abbas, and you should be really proud that Mahdi Masud, Aman Bhai, was your father, and he left such a legacy for us. Thank you.
So it's really hard to remember Bajan without smiling, because that's what he did. He always brought a smile to our faces, and I think the amazing thing about him was he could talk to any age group, transcend all barriers, and communicate with everyone in his own unique way, and also inject humor in every situation. But I think what I most valued about him was his warmth, his sincerity, and really the principled approach that he had to everything. in his entire life, and I think there are very few people like him left that I know.
Yeah, Abba Jan will be sorely missed. My memories of him are always when I used to go to some family gathering. He used to always call me, obviously, initial pleasantries, but somehow he always had an anecdote or a story or something relevant to what was going on. And from what I remember, every time it was different. So it wasn't like he repeated the same story again. So, it was, I used to actually look forward to it. When I used to meet him, I used to say, okay, where is he? And now what discussion is he going to have?
Yeah, unbelievable store of treasure trove of anecdotes and jokes and stories and moral lessons.
Yeah, he's missed by everybody.
Missed by all of us.
The majority of my memories of Abba Jan were going to his house for Zini's birthdays. I remember we used to get pink lemonade there pretty often.
Pink
lemonade. It was a
lemonade.
highlight, yeah. And I just remember I was younger when I saw him more often, but I remember his uplifting spirit in the room, always smiling, telling a story, laughing as we played around. And that's when I think I remember him.
अंकल के बारे में मैं ये कहना चाहूँगी कि मुझे याद नहीं कि मैं कभी भी कराची गई हूँ और उनसे मिलने ना गई हूँ. And he used to meet me with so much affection. और कराची से वापस आते हुए हमेशा एक किताब मेरे लिए छोड़ जाते थे या मेरे लिए भिजवा देते थे जब उनकी तबीयत ठीक नहीं थी, नसीर के हाथ. And that was the sweetest thing. मैं जब उनके घर जाती थी तो मुझे लगता था कि हमारी फैमिली का घर है. एंड ही वाज हमेशा अंकल इतने लविंग और अफेक्शनेट थे एंड सो डिग्निफाइड. और हमारी बातें भी होती थी तो ज़्यादातर किताबों की, पोइट्री की होती थी, करंट अफेयर्स की होती थी, पाकिस्तान पे बातें होती थी. उस छोटे से अरसे में चाय पीने में जाती थी. अंकल ने समोसे मंगाए हुए होते थे, केक मंगाया हुआ होता था, खूब खातिर होती थी. एंड उस अरसे में आई थिंक वी यूज्ड टू ट्रैवर्स द होल वर्ल्ड in terms of cultures, in terms of literature, history, and in terms of his lived experience, which was very interesting. और मुझे हमेशा आगा जान और अब्बा की बातें याद आती थी उनसे बात करके, because I think they were all of that same ilk. They were all very dignified, very patriotic, and they believed in doing the right thing, जो कि अब ये चीज़ें आसानी से नहीं मिलती लोगों में. So I mean, मेरी जो भी यादें अंकल से वाबस्ता हैं वो बहुत ही पॉजिटिव हैं. और and I always felt that I gained something from his company. I always felt validated by his company, because like me, he believed that it's important to do the right thing and it's important to stand up for the right thing. So I will always remember him with a lot of fondness.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम all of you. अब्बा जान की बरसी है तो बाबा उनके बारे में कुछ कहना चाहते हैं. जैसे बाबा की आवाज़ का मसला है तो बाबा की शायद आपको आवाज़ समझ ना आए, तो मैं उनका मैसेज आप तक पहुंचाना चाहती हूँ. अब्बा जान को बाबा ने अपनी लाइफ के 20 साल दिए हैं. बाबा ज़ाहिर है उनको भूल नहीं पा रहे हैं. तो अब्बा जान की हमारी लाइफ में बहुत ही एक अहम वो पर्सनैलिटी थे. ही वॉज आइडियल पर्सनैलिटी ऑफ अस. तो हम खुद अब्बा जान को बहुत ज़्यादा मिस करते हैं वी ऑल, लेकिन सबसे ज़्यादा बाबा उनको मिस करते हैं. तो उन्होंने अपनी लाइफ के 20 साल उनके साथ गुजारे हैं, तो उनके लिए आसान नहीं है उनको भूलना. बस हम दुआ कर सकते हैं अब्बा जान के लिए कि अल्लाह पाक उनको जन्नतुल फिरदौस में जगह आला मुकाम अता फरमाए. आमीन सुम आमीन. लव यू अब्बा जान.
आदाब. कराची से बाखर नवा हमारे साथ हमारे शरीक हयात महनाज हैं और साहिबजादे हसनैन और दुफ्तर में अख्तर ज़ैना रिकॉर्डिंग कर रही हैं. अब्बास, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर गिविंग अस द अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर अस टू रिमेंबर ममन भाई. सरप्राइजिंगली मोहम्मद मामू और निगार आंटी से मेरी मुलाकात बहुत अरसे के बाद हुई मेरी ज़िंदगी में. آئی ایم ٹاکنگ آف mid 70s جب ہم لوگ اسلام آباد میں تھے اور محمد ماموں کی پوسٹنگ جارڈن سے ہوئی تھی. تو پہلی دفعہ میرا ان سے انٹریکشن ہوا تھا یہ, اور ہم لوگ کے گھر بہت آتے تھے. ہمارے والدین سے ان کی بہت زیادہ دوستی تھی, جن کو احمد بھائی اور اختری باجی کہتے تھے. والد کے ساتھ ان کی کرکٹ کے بہت ڈسکشنز ہوتے تھے, اور ہم لوگوں نے بہت پاکستانی اردو مووی ساتھ مل کے دیکھی ہیں, اور وہ زیادہ تر ہمیں پنڈی جانا پڑتا تھا کیونکہ ساری سنیما ہاؤس ہی وہیں ہوا کرتے تھے. اور اس زمانے میں اسلام آباد سے پنڈی جانا اٹ واز لائک ٹریولنگ فرام کراچی ٹو حیدرآباد. ویکینڈس پہ جب یہ لوگ ڈپلومیٹک اپنی پارٹیز پہ جاتے تھے تو زیبی واز سینٹ اوور فار آر ہوم فار بیبی سٹنگ. although it was very easy to baby sit her because she used to bring lot of books اور سارا وقت وہ کتابیں پڑھ رہی ہوتی تھی. Then again there was a big gap and till I moved to Karachi, and by that time Maman Mamu had retired اور وہ بھی کراچی میں سیٹل ہو گئے تھے. So this was in 2005. ہمارے والدین ہمیشہ گھر میں محرم میں مجالس ہوتی تھی, تو 2005 میں پہلی دفعہ میں نے اور مہناز نے مجلس کا ارادہ کیا. تو سب سے پہلے دماغ میں محمد ماموں کا نام آئے گا, وہ مجلس پڑھیں گے کیونکہ ان کو ہم نے ہمیشہ شب عاشور کی مجلس پڑھتے ہوئے سنا تھا. سو وی آسکڈ ہم سر کہ میں ریگولر پڑھنے والا تو ہوں, بٹ آن آر انسسٹنس ہی اگریڈ, اینڈ پیپل loved him because most of our audience had not listened to him and they were amazed by his style of oration, his memory, اور جس طرح وہ کربلا کے اشعار پڑھتے تھے, سید عالیہ رضا کے جوش کے, اور اس فیوریٹ آلسو کرامہ غوری کے بھی کچھ اشعار میں پڑھا کرتے تھے. سو انہیں کوئی 5 سال ہمارے گھر مجالس پڑھی ہیں یہ, اینڈ دیئر بیوٹیفل میموریز. اینڈ اور مجھے اس بات کی بھی خوشی ہے کہ صرف میرے اور مہناز سے ان کے اچھی میموریز ہی نہیں, بٹ ہمارے تینوں بچے زہرا, حسنین اور زینہ, اور پھر ابھی ہمارے داماد اسد رضا کے ساتھ بھی ان کی وہ اچھی کنیکشن ہو گئی تھی, which I am so happy.
بھیا ویسے بھی 25 مسجد گئے ہیں اور زیادہ تر کراچی میں گئے, لکھنؤ میں 2 گئے تھے, اور لکھنؤ میں زیادہ تر غزلیں کہیں دیوائے رضا بہت اچھی تھی. لیکن بھیا نے جو کہا کہ انہوں نے کیسے شروع کیا, تو انہوں نے بتایا کہ ایک دن وہ بیٹھے ہوئے تھے, وہ وکالت کرتے تھے, تو اپنے دفتر میں بیٹھے ہوئے تھے, اور کوئی وہ زمانہ مانسون کا نہیں تھا, بارش کا نہیں تھا, لیکن ایک دم جو پانی برسنے لگا تو بے ساختہ, اور حالانکہ ان کا نہ کوئی ان کو مرثیے کا خیال تھا, نہ محرم کا موسم تھا ادھر, محرم گزرانا, تو بے ساختہ انہوں نے کہا کہ اب یہ بے فصل میں اب کی یہ سما دکھ رہا ہے, آسمان سوگ میں تھا جب کہ محرم آیا, رد گئی جتنی فضا اتنا ہی غم بھی چھایا, بوجھے پڑھنے جو لگی یار نے دل کر پایا, کتنا پانی ہے کہ بے وقت برس جاتا ہے اور کبھی قافلہ پیاسا ہوتا ہے.
I always felt کہ ماموں was a very genuine and a very sincere person. وہ بے شک میری خیریت بھی اگر معلوم کر رہے ہیں تو لگتا تھا جیسے دل سے پوچھ رہے ہیں. It wasn't something superficial. Moreover, I always found him a very well-dressed person. He always took great care of what he was wearing. اور بعد میں اگر کبھی ان کی طبیعت نہیں بھی ٹھیک ہوتی تھی, but he always used to look so nice and he always used to take the compliments really well. جب ان سے کہیں کہ مامو آپ you're looking so smart, and he used to be so happy. So he used to have this typical smile اور بڑے مسکرا کے thank you کہتے تھے. So that was really sweet. And moreover, another point that came to my mind was کہ Mamu had great respect for everybody. ہمیشہ ہر ایک کسی سے آپ کر کے اس کو مخاطب کرتے تھے, بے شک کوئی چھوٹا بچہ ہو یا کوئی ملازم ہے یا کوئی اس عمر میں چھوٹے ہیں, جو بھی, ہمیشہ میں نے کبھی ان کو تم کر کے بات کرتے نہیں دیکھا. So which I felt was something very unusual for these times now. But he was a great man, and we hope that he's keeping everybody happy where he is, and we're surrounded by all his loved ones there.
مامن انکل کے ساتھ ہم سب کی بہت یادیں ہیں, لیکن ایک واقعہ جو ہمیشہ مجھے یاد آتا ہے ان کے بارے میں وہ یہ ہے कि एक बार मैं कुछ 10-11 साल का था और हम एक शादी पे थे, तो मैं अपनी कुर्सी पे बैठा हुआ था, एकदम से मोहम्मद अंकल आ गए और उन्होंने मुझसे कहा कि हसनैन साहब स्टेज के साथ आपके एक दोस्त है, वहाँ खड़ा हुआ है, वो आपको बुला रहा है। मैंने कहा मेरा दोस्त? उन्होंने कहा जी। मैंने कहा सही है मोहम्मद अंकल, अगर आप कह रहे हैं तो मैं जाके देख लेता हूँ। तो मैं स्टेज की जाने बढ़ा, वहाँ पे तो कोई भी नहीं था, तो मैंने मुड़ के देखा और पीछे मोहम्मद अंकल मेरी कुर्सी पे बैठ गए। तो मोहम्मद अंकल का इस किस्म का ह्यूमर हमें हमेशा याद रहेगा। और मोहम्मद अंकल का आखिरी तोहफा हमारे वो ये फैज़ अहमद फैज़ की किताब थी, जो जिसमें उन्होंने लिखा है कि विद डीप अफेक्शन एंड सिंसियर ब्लेसिंग्स फॉर डियर हसनैन, जहरा एंड जैना, मोहम्मद भाई. So these small things we'll always remember.
Adab, the fondest memory that I have of Mamu is that when our Dadi was alive, and whenever Mamu and Mamu happened to pass by our house, he would always ring our bell, and while standing outside through the intercom, he would ask कि अख्तरी बाजी खैरियत से हैं, आप सब खैरियत से हैं, and that's all, and he would just bid leave from बाहर से ही, और वो अपने गाड़ी बैठ के used to drive by, and I always found that to be the sweetest and such a wonderful display of affection from his end, which will always remain imprinted in my mind, and I'm sure up there he must be making everybody smile because of his great company and great sense of humor. Thank you.
But I remember going over to your parents' houses. I mean, obviously I've known them all my life, because I suppose my first memories of Maman Bhai was when I was about 7 or 6 or 7, something like that, when he had just joined the Foreign Office, and he was what they called in those days a probationer. And I don't know why he was in London, or maybe that's what they did. But because he was in London, or posted as his probationer in London, obviously he was at our house all the time, because that was when Appa was High Commissioner. So that's when my first memories of him go back. I particularly remember Maman Bhai's love of Oscar Wilde. He used to love reciting poetry. He was one of the kindest, sweetest people I know. Oh. And he was funny. He was amusing. That's important. A lot of people don't have a sense of humor in life. And I will never forget that the last time I saw him was when I actually went to Karachi to condole him for Nigar. And he said to me, how beautifully, beautifully you took care of your mother in her last days.
Thank you.
He made a point of telling. What I'm trying to say is the family goes back at many levels, a very long time. And then, of course, your parents got married, and that was lovely, and Nigar. And it's very lovely when somebody whom you've known very well marries somebody who becomes as close to you as the person they're marrying. Because otherwise that can make it great. And I remember when we stayed with your parents in Tehran, we have a very special way of doing shami kebabs in my mother's family. Mm-hmm. And very few people do them that way. And your mother used to do the same shami kebabs, and Amma was so impressed because very few people do them. They were just loving people who one could always rely upon. I remember how stalwart they were after Ammi died, and Maman Bhai sitting there and being so affectionate and so strong and practical, because she was practical.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know? And I always knew that when there were people like that in Karachi, I used to not worry so much about Ammi, because I always knew that they were amongst the people that looked out for her and looked after her. So there it is, you know, what to say.
It's a real absolute honour to be asked to say a few words about Maman Bhai. When I was young, Maman Bhai was always ready with a joke and a leg pull. But it wasn't until I grew older that I realised the true worth of the man. Painfully honest, upright, loyal, faithful and true to his family and also to the country. And we also shared an unusual love of Premiership football, and his knowledge amazed me time and time again. He was right up to date with what was going on in the Premiership and the Champions League, and of course cricket as well. Then he showed a real interest in when I got married and in our adoption of Donya. And well, Afra will speak in a second, but out of all the sea of people that Afra met in my family, it was Maman Bhai that struck a particular chord with Afra. But let me, Afra, do you want to say?
Yes, Maman Bhai was very, very special to me, and I'm sure he was special to everybody who ever was lucky enough to come into contact with him, know him, hear his lovely stories, his memories, his experiences. I always looked forward to my trips to Karachi for multiple reasons, but one big reason was Maman Bhai. Since his passing, the trips have always felt a little bit lacking because of him not being there. In the little time that I knew him, I really fell in love with everything that he always had to say. He reminded me of my maternal grandfather, Bobo June, who passed away when I was very relatively young. So looking forward to seeing him. It was almost like seeing Bobo June. He's very, very missed, and we loved him dearly, and we love you very much, Sadie. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Cousin Abbas and Cousin Zebi, for asking me to speak today on Mamu Jan's Barsi. Mamu Jan was a great diplomat, a great man of letters, and above everything else, he was a man of his family. And I am late in my life learning Urdu Shairi. I'm reading Mir Taqi Mir, so I'd like to recite a short couplet about Mamu Jan. मत सहल हमें जानो फिरता है फलक बरसों तब खाक के पर्दे से इंसान निकलता है।
लखनऊ को मशरक़ी तमद्दुन का आखिरी नमूना कहा जाता है। मेरे बचपन के लखनऊ में बहुत से घराने तबक़ा अशराफिया में मशहूर थे, मगर जदीद तालीम के एतबार से दो घराने ख़ास तौर पर काबिल ज़िक्र थे। जस्टिस वज़ीर हसन का घराना, जिनके साहबजादे सज्जाद ज़हीर, अली ज़हीर, हसन ज़हीर, हुसैन ज़हीर बहुत मशहूर थे, और दूसरा घराना था जस्टिस मोहम्मद रज़ा का, जिनके चार साहबजादे सैयद आले रज़ा, सैयद हाशिम रज़ा, सैयद कासिम रज़ा, सैयद मसूद रज़ा, और ये चारों पाकिस्तान में बहुत मुमताज़ और मकबूल और मशहूर लोगों में शुमार होते हैं। मुझे सैयद आले रज़ा लखनवी, जो आरजू लखनवी साहब के शागिर्द थे और नहायत आला दर्जे की गज़ल गो और नहायत उम्दा मरसिया गो, मुझे उनसे न्याज हासिल था। मैंने कई दफ़ा उनको PTU के लिए इंटरव्यू भी किया और मुशायरों में भी उनके साथ शिरकत की। मैंने उनकी महफिल में कई दफ़ा एक नौजवान को देखा जो फिर वो उनके भांजे थे और उनसे बहुत करीब थे, और उनको मामू जान कह के मुखातिब करते थे मेहदी मसूद साहब। वो वज़ारत ख़ारजा में आला उहदों पे फ़ाइज़ रहे, मुख्तलिफ़ मुल्कों में सफ़ीर रहे, मगर मुझे वो याद आते हैं एक नहायत शाइस्ता, नहायत मतीन, खूबसूरत, वजी, खुश लिबास, खुश गुफ्तार आदमी। उर्दू और अंग्रेज़ी ज़बानों पर उनको यकसां दस्तरस थी। बेशुमार क्लासिकी शुआरा के अशार उनको याद थे, मरसियों के बंद उनको अकबर थे। मुझे याद है कि जब भी मेरी उनसे मुलाकात हुई, उनसे अशार सुनने का मौका आया, नहायत अच्छे तरीक़े से शेर पढ़ते थे। और आले रज़ा साहब मरहूम की जिस दिन रहलत हुई तो मैंने TV से एक प्रोग्राम नशर किया, और मैंने आखिर प्रोग्राम में एक शेर पढ़ा था आले रज़ा साहब का, उठा के बज़्म मोहब्बत से ले गए।
Greetings and adabs to everybody. I'm going to be reading a short tribute that Amma wrote out for Maman Bhai. She says, one word describes dearest Maman Bhai: gentleman. What a great person, so well versed in Shero Shairi and matters of the world. A skilled diplomat and a very loving and caring person, loved his sense of humor and his use of the word aap for everyone, small or big. His loss is felt by all of us. Abbas had requested that Amma make a video, but she felt uncomfortable doing it. Thus, my little video for you. Just 2 words from me about Maman Bhai. I think he was an incredible human being. I don't think I have ever met a gentler human being ever in my life, and I don't think I will ever again. He radiated warmth, gentleness, acceptance, love, all the good things of this world. We miss him, and we will continue to feel his presence amongst us, because people like him who leave us never really leave us. They are always part of us. Love, bye-bye.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Remembering the one and only Mahdi Masud Sahab is a privilege. It was, first of all, important to know that not only in terms of his immediate family, but his larger extended family, Mahdi Masud Sahab came from a very unusual collection of remarkable individuals. People who served in government, civil society or in business, but all of them shared a heritage of character and values, of which he was a proud standard bearer, and in fact advanced and enhanced them, because he had a seamless kind of personality, both his inner and his outer self. There was no contradiction between the two fused together. And this became all the more notable because the profession that he chose, which is diplomacy, inevitably requires a veneer of artifice, of cultivating a demeanor that is deceptively apparent and yet is deceptive. But in Mahdi Masud Saab's case, there was no such dichotomy apparent. It doesn't mean he was indiscreet or tactless. He personified the etiquette and the protocol that comes with diplomacy. And he was thus able to serve his beloved Pakistan with courage, with conviction, and with capability in a range of capacities and locations. Whether it was hostile Calcutta, the worst possible time, or several assignments overseas and in Pakistan, he really excelled at diplomacy. And in keeping with his career that spanned continents, his intellect also spanned cultures across Asia, Europe, the Americas. It included a mastery of language and a knowledge of literature and the arts that enabled him to quote from memory in beautiful Persian or Urdu or English, leading him to become a raconteur par excellence. He would hold us absorbed, evoking the color, the nuance, the tone of people whom he had met, places he had visited, important events of which he was a part. Dear Mahdi Masud Saab, may your soul always have serenity in heaven.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. One of my earliest recollection of Maman Bhai is the wedding at Metropole Hotel. He was looking so dashing and blissful, as did Nigar auntie. Maman Bhai was a unique individual. He had to contend being the only brother among his wonderful sisters who all adored him. He was always kind, considerate, caring for everyone, whether it was relatives, friends, the domestics, general person. He was always there for everyone. Maman Bhai was a constant visitor at our home, visiting Mummy and spending much time with her which she always looks forward to and enjoyed. We all loved and enjoyed all his practical jokes. He was always putting a smile on everyone. Maman Bhai was an intelligent person, demonstrated by his checkered career, and was much in demand by TV channels on a medley of issues on different subjects. His religious fervor was unquestionable, and we all look forward to his sermons during Muharram. On a personal note, Maman Bhai displayed a unique connection with Samira. Throughout Samira's illness, he was always concerned for her, calling us regularly when we were in Karachi, and even when we moved to the US, he never forgot to call, and he was always used to tell me how wonderful Samira was and what a brave lady she was. He made us feel so wanted and loved. There was a wonderful man, adored and loved by all. It is said that time will pass and sorrow will fade, but our precious memories of Maman Bhai will always remain. He touched everyone's life. We dearly miss you, Maman Bhai. God bless us all. Ameen.
Maman Bhai ki yaad mein. Maman Bhai was my mother's younger brother, but literally the apple of her eye. As a very small boy, I remember seeing a photograph of a young Maman Bhai with Imam Zamin on his arm with a big smile on his face. And I remember asking my mother who this person was, and she told me that this is my brother, Maman, who was posted in Canada, I think, at that time. And she said it so proudly. I must have been about 4 or 5 years old. And till her dying day, I used to receive phone calls from her कि आज रात को 8 बजे जियो टीवी ज़रूर देख लेना, मम्मन आ रहे हैं, और प्रोग्राम देखने के बाद हमें फ़ोन कर देना. That's how obsessed she was with him. She loved him and she loved spoiling him. Maman Bhai, you were phenomenal. We miss you. We love you and miss you. Maman Bhai, as you know, was a very, very patriotic Pakistani. And one of the poems which I loved and I used to make him recite was a poem on Karachi, which goes like this. हमने पाया है कराची को बहुत कुछ खोकर, अपनी कुर्बानियों ईसार का फल है ये शहर, हम फकीरों के लिए रंज कशीदों के लिए हिंद के 500 शहरों का बदल है ये शहर. This is by Rais Amrohi, and Maman Bhai used to recite it so beautifully. हिंद के 500 शहरों का बदल है ये शहर.
As I think of Abba Jan on his second Barsi, I can't help but smile. He was such an integral part of what I think was really magical childhood in Kuwait. We moved there when I was 2, and I had the pleasure of really having Mummy and Abba Jan's house as my own home. They were my Nana and Nani in Kuwait. I feel like I was their first unofficial grandchild, and I was just showered with so much love by both of them. And when I think of Abba Jan, I see him kind of chuckling to himself at the latest prank that he was successful at pulling off on me. And those pranks lasted from when I was 2 years old till I was well into my 20s. Growing up in Kuwait, I always, obviously saw him more as a grandfather, just lots of love, jokes. And then as I grew older and got to spend more time with him in Karachi once they had retired, really got exposed to just, his amazing intellect, his amazing memory, the great anecdotes he used to tell and share. And I really, really miss him, but I'm just so grateful that I got to be a part of his life. And of course, my dearest mummy, who left us just way too soon. I love you, Abba Jan. I miss you a lot, but I'm just very, very grateful that I got to be a part of your life and got to spend the time I did with you. Until we meet again.
एक कहानी मैं सुनाना चाहता हूँ जिससे आपको अंदाज़ा होगा कि मेरे लिए मसूद साहब की न सिर्फ शायरी का हाफजा था लेकिन हाफजा ऐसा था जो कि लोगों को हैरान छोड़ देता था। मेरी कहानी ये है कि हम रिटन होटल में तेहरान में गए थे और एक किताब मैंने उठाई, उन्होंने वही किताब भी उठाई और दोनों ने पढ़ा और मैं वापस आ गया। जब हमने बातचीत शुरू की तो उन्होंने उस किताब को पूरी तरह से रिकॉल कर लिया जो उन्होंने पढ़ा था। मैं वापस गया, जाके चेक किया तो हर लफ्ज़ ब लफ्ज़ उन्होंने वही चीज़ थी जो कि किताब में थी। तो न सिर्फ गालिब और दाग और दूसरे शायरों पे उनकी एक अबूर था, लेकिन उनके हाफजा इस नौयत का था कि मैं हैरान कर रह गया।
Here to talk about my most beloved Mamu uncle, Mr. Mahdi Masud. We all knew him as Mamman Bhai, universally. He was Mr. Mahdi Masud was my only maternal uncle, the only brother of 5 sisters, my mother Salma being the eldest child. He was the cherished son of Sayyid Masud Hassan and Begum Ahmadi Hassan. A patriot to the core, he literally could not tolerate any criticism of Pakistan. He wrote profusely for the best publications. A supremely scintillating writer and orator in English and Urdu, he was a great lover of books. Masud worked tirelessly as a student for the movement for Pakistan, his hero being the founder of Pakistan, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. In Pakistan, Mr. Mahdi Masud's brilliance shone when he was declared first in the Central Superior Services exams yearly, joining the Pakistan Foreign Service. It was a brilliant career. Pakistan ambassador to Kuwait, Jordan, Belgium, UAE and Germany. True Renaissance man. He was an institution with a stupendous memory. His Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Boston, USA professor told him, Mr. Mahdi Masud, you have a photographic memory. How we enjoyed his jokes. What a sparkling sense of humor. His mastery over every subject, spiritual, secular and political, was amazing. A man of faith, he educated us enormously. His quotations still echoing in our minds and hearts. Compassionate, kind, generous, he was a true humanist. It is once in 1,000 years that such a man comes along. And in our opinion, Mahdi Masud is the man. This I have added myself. So, thank you, Zebi and Abbas and your whole families. Maman Bhai is unforgettable. He will always be in our hearts and minds.
Maman Nana Adab. What can I say except I truly wish Amani had the time to spend with you like we did and to learn from you. When you were on earth, you were the brightest star, Maman Nana, filled with passion and intellect and most of all, humility and gentleness. What a gentleman you were, Maman Nana. And now I have no doubt that you are the brightest star in heaven, shining down on us every single day. We love you and we miss you.
Integrity to the hilt, a true patriot, immensely humble and modest, demonstrating utmost respect, kindness and affection to the young and old alike, and not to forget his very sharp sense of humor and photographic unmatched memory. That was really amazing. I have personally benefited from the strong interest he always took in my career advancement, and whenever there was a new posting coming up or some kind of a high level assignment, the first thought that would come to my mind was, oh, let me tell Maman Bhai, he'll be so happy. So Maman Bhai, thank you so much for the genuine and sincere interest you always took in my and my family's life, and the four of us continue to remember you and think of you so fondly.
I would like to ditto Ali's sentiments. Truly, Maman Bhai is greatly missed by all of us. We have had a special association with him and Khala, and we have treasured those times spent with them. I can't believe Maman Bhai will not be there when I go back to Karachi, and we'll miss our regular visits with him. Whenever we visited and were about to leave, he always gave us some sort of notes written down for each of our family members, me, Ali, and the children individually. Loving messages. I'm going to read one of his notes, part of one of his notes. He quoted Tagore, "Friends meet in this world by chance, and the chance carries us together some portion of the way. And then comes the moment when we must part. Let us part with the hope that we part to meet again." So, dear Maman Bhai, we will meet again, and I hope you and Khala are in the best place in heaven right now. Ameen.
Hello everyone. As we remember Maman Bhai today, a lot of thoughts keep rushing to the mind, lots of memories. Of course, we loved him and he's left a big vacuum in our lives. But I have a very special place for him, or he has a special place in my heart because of my lovely Khala, who was our second mother, sometimes our first mother. And association with her made us even closer to Maman Bhai. So one incident that I really would like to relate is that he once invited us to a restaurant, all of us sisters. And as the bill came, he asked me to read out to him the amount, and he paid it. And I never even give it a second thought. But the next day there was a note through the driver apologizing and regretting and saying, please don't think bad of me. You know, I don't know how I could have done that. I'm so used to asking Zebi to read out the bill. And I called him and I said, well, I'm happy that you considered me like Zebi, and I didn't even give it a second thought. So that's how proper and correct he was. And always concerned about my being alone. Bachche, tum kaisi ho? Tumhe kisi cheez ki zarurat to nahi? Dropping in once in a while in the evenings, relating his jokes again and again, each time more interesting, his wit, his shairi. What lovely evenings we've had, what lovely moments we've enjoyed him. And Maman Bhai, we love you, we will always miss you. You were the one buzurg that was there whom we really looked up to, and it's a very big gap for us now.
ममन भाई जैसी ज़ात के लिए फ्यू वर्ड्स कहना बस यूं ही समझिए जैसे समंदर में कूजे को बंद करना है. But I do consider myself very fortunate that I got to spend a lot of time in his company in the last maybe 10 years or so of his life. So I have gained a lot. यानी उन महफिलों से बहुत कुछ सीखा जो उन जैसी हस्ती के साथ गुजारी. Two things, Abbas, that I was thinking that really stand out for me specifically in terms of your father's personality or persona are, number one, his wonderful, absolutely wonderful sense of humor, and his able sense of humor, and his ability to that memory of his was phenomenal, but his ability to narrate a joke and to, bring on that punchline with that specifically mischievous twinkle in his eye, also looking at his audience quite carefully to measure what kind of effect it was having on us. That was wonderful. So in this connection, one of the jokes, a limerick in fact, I hope everyone knows what a limerick is. So a limerick that I remember, which he told me a number of times, which meant perhaps that it was a favorite of his too, and I'd like to share that. So the limerick goes, there was a young man of Lyme. I think it's a dig at the Irish, but of course it's tongue-in-cheek. There was a young man of Lyme who had three wives at a time. When asked, why the third? Why the third? He said, one is absurd, and bigamy, sir, is a crime. So Maman Bhai used to love to repeat this to people and say it again and again. I think it was a favorite of his, and I love it too. And to me, it kind of signifies, the essence of his sense of humor, which was wonderful. There were many others, but I can't, I don't have that kind of time here to go on. The second aspect of his personality, number one, sense of humor, and number two was his patriotism. This quality, he was a patriot personified. I mean, I have no other words for it. Patriotism was intrinsic, ingrained in his nature. I mean, from the time when we all heard that in Lucknow he was part of the All India Youth Muslim League, and perhaps amongst the young blood who raised their voices for the creation of Pakistan, from that time to the very last, he remained a Pakistani, complete Pakistani, and he represented his country most honorably in many countries as a diplomat. He was a consummate diplomat, and I think he was so successful perhaps in what he did in his career also because his loyalty to his country was unquestionable. Anyway, वो रईस अमरोवी का एक कथा हमको सुनाते थे. वो कथा पाकिस्तान के बारे में नहीं है, लेकिन वो कराची के बारे में है. तो कराची इज़ अ माइक्रोकॉज्म ऑफ पाकिस्तान, तो समझिए कि पाकिस्तान ही के बारे में है, लेकिन कराची से मोहब्बत के बारे में है. हमने पाया है कराची को बहुत कुछ खोकर, हमने पाया है कराची को बहुत कुछ खोकर, अपनी कुर्बानियों ईसार का फल है ये शहर. हम गरीबों के लिए, रंज कशीदों के लिए, हिंद के 500 शहरों का बदल है ये शहर. Maman Bhai, it was not only a pleasure but a privilege to have been in your company. We have learned and evolved and grown. Thank you for imparting your knowledge and your experience with the kind of ease that you did. Sleep softly. Be at peace. I love you.
गुलों में रंग भरे, बादलों बहार चले. गुलों में रंग भरे, बादलों बहार चले. चले बिया चले. गुलों में रंग भरे, बादलों बहार चले. चले बिया के गुलशन का कारोबार चले.
Hello everybody. Speaking about Maman Bhai, Zebi, you 1 minute, impossible. You need hours and at least 10 minutes to talk about Maman Bhai. So, and then I was never one for never articulate in the spoken word. So I've written it down so that it might be faster. Okay, so quickly skim over his qualities, which were so many. Others will elaborate upon them. But he had this, I feel he had this reservoir of treasures of knowledge, and he used to come up with the most apt anecdotes pertaining to whichever subject was under discussion. He used to dip into his reservoir, come out with some anecdote, some quotation, and he was always ready with it. And I've seldom heard him repeat something. Otherwise, people have this habit of saying the same thing. But he had this immense reservoir, like I said before. his sense of humor both ways. I mean, he could take it as well as give, which is not what many people can do. People make, at other people's expense, they make jokes and things, but they can't take it themselves. But Maman Bhai, and an example is Zebi's hilarious accounts of his phobias and lizards and all, So that was his very good quality of his sense of humor. His fierce patriotism, I don't know whether I mentioned it. That was his integrity, and then his impeccability in manners. By pointing out another very soft side of Maman Bhai, he used to come to our house at Shahbaz from his Sibiu house, and just to meet Samar, and he used to tell Samar jokes, tease her, tell her jokes, and he used to tell them with a very serious face, and Samar would respond with the Bhabhi Amma type silent laughter. He used to perfectly understand what he meant. And then finally, when we were leaving for the States, he came to see us off, and I will never forget the tears in his eyes as the car drove out of the driveway for the airport. And Maman Bhai just followed the car, kept tapping on Samar's window with tears in his eyes, and till we were out of the gate. Maman Bhai, you are missed more than you could imagine. God bless your doting children and grandkids. Khuda Hafiz.
आप सबको सलाम. मेरा नाम साद शफ़क़त है. I had the honor of being Ambassador Mahdi Masud's neurologist for several years. He used to consult me about his back, but the relationship went well beyond doctor-patient interaction because he was also a family friend, someone I very much looked up to. He knew my father, Dr. Hamid Shafqat. He knew my maternal grandfather, Mumtaz Hasan. और जब भी मिलते थे तो इन दोनों में से किसी एक का जिक्र ज़रूर करते थे, समटाइम्स दोनों का. जब मैं अंकल मसूद के बारे में सोचता हूँ और उनको याद करता हूँ, the words that come to mind are culture, refinement, erudition, and empathy, commitment, integrity. He was always very conscious of the discomfort of others, and my father had memorized one of his quotations, which was the definition of manners. वो कहते थे कि manners is an instinctive appreciation of the discomfort of others, and I think this is something he had very much internalized. और उनकी हर बात में दूसरे का ख्याल हमेशा सामने आता था. He was a much beloved figure. He often mentioned both his children Abbas and Zainab to me, Mumtaz Hasan. और जब भी मिलते थे तो इन दोनों में से किसी एक का जिक्र ज़रूर करते थे, समटाइम्स दोनों का. जब मैं अंकल मसूद के बारे में सोचता हूँ और उनको याद करता हूँ, the words that come to mind are culture, refinement, erudition, and empathy, commitment, integrity. He was always very conscious of the discomfort of others, and my father had memorized one of his quotations, which was the definition of manners. वो कहते थे कि manners is an instinctive appreciation of the discomfort of others, and I think this is something he had very much internalized. और उनकी हर बात में दूसरे का ख्याल हमेशा सामने आता था. He was a much beloved figure. He often mentioned both his children Abbas and Zainab to me. I miss him greatly. He's from an era and he's from a generation that was a very special generation जिन्होंने हमारा मुल्क बनाया. और ये ऐसी जनरेशन है जो कि is a treasure, and we wish them the very best, and I wish Uncle Masood all the bliss and happiness in heaven. Thank you.
I remember Maman Bhai for as far back as my memory takes me. Like all of us, much younger than him at the time, we all quite worshipped him and continued to for much of our lives. Now, my earliest memories are from the Khodo Roadhouse, opposite the Gymkhana. And this is 1950-51. At lunch, there were inevitably a number of people around the dining table, members of the extended family. And I remember Maman Bhai then, he must have been 20 or 21, sitting with a group of some fairly able raconteurs. But Maman Bhai holding his own, really, quite comprehensively. Verses, anecdotes, jokes, conversation, wit, and then other people recounting stories illustrating the more practical aspects of Maman Bhai's humor. Stories of calling fairly responsible people in responsible senior positions in government at the time, calling them, Maman Bhai calling them, pretending to be someone from the police, impersonating someone from the police or the fire department or someone indeed very high up, very senior in the hierarchy where whoever was being called worked. And then giving him some sort of story that set off a wave of panic in the person called, or sending him off on a wild goose chase, such as in the middle of the night, for example, to receive someone at the airport, dressed in suit and tie, someone who didn't exist. One such incident was to call someone, a person who Maman Bhai knew had gone through a series of tests, medical tests, to call him in the evening, purporting to be calling from the laboratory where he'd had the tests, telling him everything else was all right, but his stool was radioactive, and could he isolate himself, preferably underground, till such time as that he could see a doctor. Another early memory, this was 1952, I think, the whole family was grouped around the radio in what we used to call the Beach Ka Kamra in the Khodo Roadhouse. So that Maman Bhai, Baji, Nana, Mummy, Daddy, and a number of other people, all of us children, waiting to hear the civil service exam results. Maman Bhai had sat for the service that year. Hundreds of people sat, about 150 were selected for the different services, and most people's first choice was the civil service or the foreign service. Now, to get into the civil service, you had to be among the first 25 who qualified. But to get into the foreign service, which was the preference for a lot of the brightest at that time, you had to be in the first 4 or 5. So Maman Bhai was sitting right in the front with a pad and a pencil waiting to write down the pecking order. The names would be read over the radio from first to last, starting with the first person. So Maman Bhai was sitting right in front. And I remember as the reading started, as the announcer started reading the names of the candidates, the first name was Maman Bhai's. And I remember him flinging his pad up in the air and his pencil in the air. And we all went off screaming around the room in sort of whoops of great celebration. And I think later that week, Nana held a dinner at the Metropole to celebrate Maman Bhai's, quite phenomenal success. Remember, the civil service then was everyone's first choice. The best and the brightest sat for it, and to have come first, it's not quite that now. Now there are many professional careers for white-collar workers, but in those days, it was assumed that this is what you would try and do, get into the services, and topping that really was an astounding achievement. Then next, I remember his wedding at the Metropole. This was, I think, a couple of years later, 1954. By then, he'd shaved what we all thought was a very fine moustache. Now, whether this was Foreign Office protocol, Nigar Baji's command, or his personal choice, I don't know. Now, I remember at the wedding, all of us, Maman Bhai's sisters' children, were all dressed in pseudo dinner jackets, a white shirt with a bow tie, black waistcoat, black trousers. And while the night was full of light and music and glamour, my overpowering memory is that Mahdi, Ali and Arif, Tehsin Baji is Arif, being sent home early in disgrace. At some point in the evening, they were found unsteady and stinking of alcohol. The suspicion was that they'd taken a flying start at the Demon Drink. They were 4 or 5 years old at the time. That they'd taken a flying start at the Demon Drink and things went out of hand. The more mundane truth is the bar at the Metropole opened into this reception area where the wedding reception was being given. And Mahdi had wandered into the bar at some point, come out with a pint and poured it over Ali and Arif, who then did the same thing. They retaliated. Anyway, their explanations were given short shrift and they were sent home. Once Maman Bhai started on his foreign office career, we saw him only periodically and with long gaps. Really, the only time we saw him consistently was in the last 7 or 8 years when we were all settled in Karachi and we'd meet Maman Bhai regularly most weeks. But all these times, it was fascinating when he visited. Fascinating to see him in gatherings where he would hold us all spellbound, narrating, a panorama of poetry, historical anecdotes, and all of this interspersed with very witty and humorous personal observations, and then incidents and jokes associated with the historical people he was talking about. Now, with him passed the tradition of our preceding generations and the history and culture out of which they had evolved. In the tradition of the gentleman scholar, because that's really what they were, no matter what their professional path in life, what linked these people was a certain refinement in their views on life, in their fondness, in their love of arts, in their love of traditional poetry, music, and above all, exquisite manners, politeness, and sheer decency. Above all, humanism, a belief in mankind first and last, a belief in liberalism, and a huge belief in personal freedom. To quote, tall men, sun-crowned, who lived above the fog in public duty and in private thinking. And with their passing, we are all poorer. Anyway, Abbas, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And while we can miss Maman Bhai, while we can mark his passing, I think it's important also to celebrate the different aspects of his whole, persona, and also really, that line from Majaz, "Hum par khatam Shami Ghariban Lucknow," and the passing of a epoch, and the passing of a culture, Anyway, thank you very much for this opportunity. Khuda Hafiz.
Hello, I'm Saira Moini, the great niece of my dear great uncle Sayyid Mahdi Masud, who we all most lovingly called Maman Bhai. He was my great uncle and also a great human being, and I just wanted to say a few words about that because he is such an amazing role model for the next generation, for all of us. Such an amazing human being, as was his beloved life partner, our most darling Nigar auntie. God bless her. May they all rest in peace with all our loved ones in Jannat. Ameen. When I think of our dearest Maman Bhai, I remember his shy, kind smile. What a person he was, of principle, brilliance, just a remarkable human being. I think everybody who met him or knew of him felt that way about him. I do remember when ever he was going to appear on TV, which was wonderful for the viewing public. All of his sisters and all of us, his nieces and nephews and great nieces and great nephews, would excitedly say, Maman Bhai's going to be on TV, Maman Bhai's going to be on TV. Or they'd say, and then we would, with such pride, watch him speak from his heart and convictions in just the most eloquent language. Such a refined and principled and wonderful human being. And I know that my mother would keep every single article that he wrote. I will always, always treasure having had such an amazing great uncle as Maman Bhai, Mr. Mahdi Masud. Truly a role model for all of us, and especially for the next generation, at a time when those values that he held dear are so important for our world. Thank you.
मम्मन भाई की थी क्या शान, 5 बहनों में एक पहलवान, कुछ संजीदा कुछ शैतान, रग रग में था पाकिस्तान, पाकिस्तान से था जो प्यार, कर दिया उस पे सबको वार, क्या खिजा और क्या बहार, बिस्तर बांधा और चल दिए यार, अब्बास ज़ेबी और निगार, सब थे उनके गले का हार, पढ़ते थे जब वो आशार, हर लम्हा लगता था एक शाकार, मामू हमारे थे बहुत अपराइट, आउटस्टैंडिंग डिप्लोमेट और इस कदर ब्राइट, रॉन्ग डूइंग से करते थे वो फाइट, अकल और कलम था उनकी माइट, हम सब के थे वो प्यारे, कुछ ऐसे ही थे मामू हमारे, छोटे बड़े सबके थे दुलारे, जन्नत को हैं अब वो सिधारे. रेस्ट इन पीस ममन भाई, लव यू वेरी मच.
कि कहाँ मैं और कहाँ मेहदी मसूद साहब. There is no way that I can be so presumptuous as to pretend to talk about him or to describe him. But मुझे थोड़ी सी confidence यूँ आई कि मैंने अपने आप से पूछा कि भाई मैं तो बेशक नहीं हूँ, but who is? तो कोई भी इस काबिल नहीं है. तो इससे मैंने थोड़ी हिम्मत ली एंड मैंने ये जसारत की कि मैं कुछ बातें जो मेरे एक्सपीरियंसेस उनके साथ हुए हैं एंड व्हाट आई हैव सीन ऑफ हिम वो अपनी ज़बान में अपने अल्फाज में बयान करूं. तो दूसरी चीज़ ये भी है कि मेहदी मसूद साहब के बारे में जब बात की जाती है तो जहाँ उनकी तारीफ़ों के पुल बांधे जाएंगे, आई एम श्योर, और मैं भी यही कहूँगा जो सब कहेंगे कि दे जस्ट डोंट मेक पीपल लाइक हिम एनी मोर. जो उनका कैलिबर और क्लास है वो एक ईरा था. तो उसी के साथ साथ ये एक बड़ा लिमेंट भी है कि आजकल के जो लोग हैं, वेदर इन द फॉरेन सर्विस, इन द अदर आर्म्स ऑफ द सिविल सर्विस, और हम और हमारे साथी, हमारे कंटेम्पररीज, वी आर नॉट अ पैच ऑन मेहदी मसूद साहब एंड मैनी अदर्स ऑफ हिज इल्क एंड ऑफ हिज ईरा. वो एक क्वालिटी ही और थी. दे वर कट फ्रॉम अ डिफरेंट क्लॉथ. खैर, तो अनबिनोन्स टू अब्बास ज़ेबी एंड यू नो मैनी अदर पीपल, मेहदी मसूद साहब से मेरी बड़े मुलाकातें हुई एंड अक्सर of an afternoon he would come over to the office because वो उस वक्त अकेले थे. अब्बास तो यहाँ नहीं था, ज़ेबी भी शायद नहीं थी, तो he would be alone and he would come over to the जंग office because he was so fond of writing, और वो न्यूज़ के लिए आर्टिकल्स लिखते थे, जंग के लिए भी लिखते थे. तो he would come over and we would sit down. मेरा काम होता था चाय कॉफ़ी सप्लाई करना and he would regale me with absolutely fantastic stories of diplomatic events, of many faux pas that the government would do, और political developments के बारे में. और अक्सर वो ज़ाहिर है लिटरेरी बातें भी करते थे. He would launch into verse, पोइट्री सुनाते थे اور وہ جب ہوتا تھا تو میرے لیے تھوڑا ڈیفیکلٹ ہو جاتا تھا، اس لیے کہ وہ میں پوری طرح سمجھتا نہیں تھا. اور جب when I say کہ پوری طرح نہیں سمجھتا تھا، آئی ایم گیونگ مائی سیلف ہیوج بینیفٹ آف ڈاؤٹ، میں بالکل نہیں سمجھتا تھا. اور وہ دیکھتے تھے کہ بھائی یہ اس کی پوری طرح سمجھ میں نہیں آئی ہے، تو دین ہی وڈ ایکسپلین اینڈ ہی وڈ میک دیٹ جو وہ چیپٹر اینڈ ورس جو وہ کوٹ کر رہے ہوتے تھے، ہی وڈ میک اٹ بیوٹیفل. فار انسٹنس انہوں نے اکثر وہ فیض کی پوئمز سناتے تھے، اور پھر وہ بتاتے تھے کہ بھائی وہ جب شیخ مجیب کو بھٹو نے رہا کیا تو اس کے بعد بھٹو ایک ڈیلیگیشن لے کے وہاں ہم سب کا گیا، وہاں اس میں فیض صاحب بھی تھے اور اتنے سارے لوگ تھے، اور بھٹو کے انسٹرکشنز یہ تھے کہ یہ ریپروچمنٹ کی ٹرپ ہے، ان سے گھل مل جانا ہے، ان سے سارے داغ دھبے مٹا دینے ہیں اور ان سے دوستی کر لینی ہے واپس. اور شیخ مجیب کے انسٹرکشنز یہ تھے کہ ان کو بالکل آرمز لینتھ رکھنا ہے، ان کو بتانا ہے کہ وی ہیو ناٹ forgotten everything that you have done or allegedly done. I don't want to get into trouble with my own people. تو انہوں نے کہا جب ہم لوگ گئے وہاں پہ اور فیض صاحب گئے وہاں پہ اور انہوں نے ہم کو بہت آڑے ہاتھ لیا تو مایوس ہو کے واپس آئے، تو فیض صاحب نے یہ لکھا کہ ہم کے ٹھہرے اجنبی کتنی ملاقاتوں کے بعد. So then I was able to gain a finer appreciation of this particular poem. اور اسی طریقے سے بہت سارے اور. اچھا، عباس مسعود صاحب کی نالج، ان کی پرسنالٹی، ان کا وٹ، ان کا ہیومر، ان کی ایلوکوینس بائی لنگول، اردو ہو یا انگریزی، واز جسٹ اے جوائے ٹو بیہولڈ. اچھا، پھر ان کا وٹ اور ہیومر بہت سٹل تھا، تو یو ہیڈ ٹو بی گڈ انف ٹو کیچ دا سٹلٹی، بیکاز یہ جو ہمارے ذاکر ہیں ان کی طرح سے ایوری ٹائم ہی اسکورز اے پوائنٹ انہوں نے زور سے اپنے پیر پہ ہاتھ نہیں مارنا ہوتا تھا ٹو شو پیپل کہ بھائی میں نے کوئی بات کی ہے. ہی واز سو سٹل اینڈ ہی واز ایکسپریشن لیس، تو یو ہیڈ ٹو بی گڈ انف ٹو کیچ دا سٹلٹی اینڈ انجوائے ہز وٹ اینڈ ہیومر. جس زمانے میں ہم لوگ نے وہ لانچ کیا تھا امن کی آشا، پیس ود انڈیا، ود دا ٹائمز آف انڈیا، وہ ان کا خاص انٹرسٹ تھا، بیکاز انڈیا ہم سب کا بیک گراؤنڈ، پھر ڈپلومسی، پھر کانفلکٹ ریزولوشن، تو اس میں ان کو بہت لگاؤ تھا. اینڈ ہی وڈ کم اوور سیورل ٹائمز اینڈ ہی وڈ ڈسکس اٹ ود می اینڈ گیو می آئیڈیاز. اور یہ کبھی کوئی چیز کی فرمائش نہیں کرتے تھے، بٹ آئی نیو دیٹ جو ہمارے فنکشنز ہوتے تھے، مختلف کانفرنسز ہوتی تھیں، اس میں ان کو پارٹیسپیٹ کرنے میں بہت مزہ آتا تھا، اینڈ ہی وڈ لک فارورڈ ٹو اٹ، سو آئی وڈ آفن انوائٹ ہم. اور ایک پرٹیکولر مجھے یاد ہے سیمینار، اٹ واز آن واٹر اینڈ آن دی انڈس واٹرز ٹریٹی. ویسے تو بہت ڈرائی لگتا ہے بٹ اٹس ایکچولی ناٹ، اٹس اے ویری انٹرسٹنگ انٹریگنگ سبجیکٹ. اینڈ ہز نالج of the Indus Waters Treaty and the history of our dispute was fantastic, far better than the so-called experts جو اس سیمینار میں موجود تھے. تو وہاں پہ وہ انڈین ہائی کمشنر بھی تھا، his name was شبروال، وہ ان کو بڑا سر کر کے مل رہا تھا. اور اس کو یہ جو انڈین ڈپلومیٹس یہاں آتے ہیں، میرے خیال سے ان کو انسٹرکشنز ہوتے ہیں لائک شیخ مجیب گیو ٹو ہز پیپل کہ بھائی پاکستان سے زیادہ گھل مل نہیں جانا ہے، اور پاکستان کو یہ امپریشن نہیں دینا ہے کہ وی آر ایکولز اور وی آر ایون فرینڈز. تو وہ بڑا الوف، آرمز لینتھ میں وہ رہتا تھا. اچھا، اوپر سے ہمارے لیے تھوڑی سی امبیرسمنٹ یہ ہو گئی کہ جو لیڈی کنڈکٹ کر رہی تھیں، دا ماسٹر آف سیریمنیز ان ہر ایگزوبرنس، اس نے ان کو یور ایکسلنسی کہنے کے بجائے بار بار وہ کہہ رہی تھی، اس کو ان کو ایڈریس کر رہی تھی انڈین ہائی کمشنر کو ایز یور ہائنس، ہز ہائنس، یور ہائنس. تو وہ باقی ایمبیسڈرز اور جو ہم لوگ بیٹھے ہوئے تھے، وی ور فیلنگ اے بٹ امبیرسڈ کہ بھئی اس کو یہ نہیں پتا کہ ہائی کمشنر کو یور ایکسلنسی بول دو، بٹ یو کانٹ کال ہم ہز ہائنس. تو جب وہ ایمبیسڈر نے تقریر کی اور اس نے یہی ایک ٹون بتایا، وہ اس کے ٹون میں یہ تھا کہ بھئی پاکستان is not something that is not a country where we are too comfortable or too friendly or that we are treated with great esteem or respect. تو یہ مہدی مسعود صاحب آگے ہی بیٹھے ہوئے تھے and he stood up and he spoke اور بہت ہی اچھی تقریر کی. اور انہوں نے کہا کہ یہ آپ کو کیسے یہ خیال آیا کہ we don't respect Indian diplomats here. We give them great respect and we hold them in very high esteem. आप अभी देख लीजिए, we have just elevated you from the ranks of diplomats to royalty, from your excellency to your highness. तो सब लोग खूब हंसे, वो खुद भी embarrassed हुआ और एक हमारा फोपा जो था वो कवर अप हो गया. बहरहाल Abbas, you know, I like you very much and I think you are a great person. There are many things that I admire about you, but if you can be half the person, half the man that your father was, I think you can stand up and scream that it has been a life well lived. Mahdi Masud Saab was absolutely gem of a person. बहुत ही ज़बरदस्त आदमी थे, and it was a great joy interacting with him and learning from him. Thank you very much.
What do you say in 30 seconds about a gentleman with so many attributes? An eloquent speaker, a diplomat, a patriot, a writer, a erudite scholar, in fact, a man for all seasons. Everybody will talk about these qualities, but I love and remember him for his humane kindness. Since my arthritis, I rarely go to Karachi, but despite his failing health and bad back, he put me to shame by visiting me on each of my 3 visits. I will never forget our conversations that touched on family, history, and literature. Rest in peace, dear Maman Bhai.
Zebin Abbas, you have given me a difficult task. Not easy to talk on Maman Bhai in just a minute, but anyway. How do I remember him? I will remember him always as a gentleman who excelled in courtesy, strength of character, humor, and ikhlaqiyat. He maintained all his relationships with love and respect. I will remember, never forget, that Maman Bhai was always the first one to come and call on my mother on Eid, and the first to call or visit whenever he thought an occasion required him to do so. I'll read an extract from a letter which he wrote to Amna, and that what all he's told Amna or written about her is actually a reflection of his own personality, his own values. Amna wrote an article on Nile which he read, and then he writes to her, Abbas showed me your recent piece on Nile, every word of which reflected your deep humanity, stout-heartedness, and strength of character. It needs an intellect and power of expression like yours to give form and coherence to these thoughts and emotions. May you, Allah reward you all for this. Lots of love, Maman Bhai. Now, this is a reflection on Maman Bhai's own inner feelings, what he himself was. And he's written this with so much compassion and love. May Allah grant you the highest abode in Jannah.
How we miss you, Maman Bhai. You were the life and soul of all our gatherings. Your wit, your humor, your all-encompassing worldly knowledge, your poetry, both Urdu and English. You were a reference book for all of us. And ever so often we think, let's ask Maman Bhai, and your absence leaves us bereft. Your career, which took you to all parts of the world, kingdoms, democracies, wherever Nigar and you went, you were admired and respected. How modestly you bore your achievements. We miss the love and care you lavished on us, always calling up to ask after the family. You took all that with you, but your memory will always be with us. Your jokes, your witticisms ring in our ears, and your favorite poem by Longfellow, tell us not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. I feel somewhat happy that you were not exposed to the traumas of today. You lived in the good old days and you took them with you.
My very dearest Bhaijan, never shall your memory fade. Our sweetest love lingers around your peaceful resting place. As a sister,
I would like to tell you a little about our childhood. Bhaijan was the only brother among 5 bossy sisters, so you can imagine what it was like for him. Baji had a separate study room made for him, adjoining the veranda, probably so that he could keep a distance from her. Once in a while, when lying in bed, Atiyan Bajia would come and say the name of our hidden Imam, and he had to get out of his razai and stand, which irritated him very much. They really teased him a lot. We had a rickshaw wala who was very fond of shairi, and they had a good time reciting verses together. Abba and Bhaijan were very close to each other, but as Abba was in the civil service, he was seldom in Lucknow where we lived. Bhaijan was very fond of cricket and loved reading both Urdu and English authors. In the end, I would like to say that my beloved brother, epitome of integrity, love and devotion to family and Pakistan, which he served as a diplomat and ambassador to many countries, was an exceptional human being and is very much missed by all of us.
Miss him terribly, and every time I pass by, I still can't believe that he's not there. I just feel his presence in that, block. But what a legend. I mean, really, literally. Miss him a lot. He was one of a kind, absolute thorough gentleman, and just so good. He was so good that आजकल के ज़माने की, ये there, बिल्कुल, I don't have the right words.
भी हमने जो विश करने के लिए फ़ोन किया था उसका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, और ये भी याद दिला दिया कि 2 साल गुजर गए अमन भाई को बिल्कुल पता नहीं लगा। और अब क्या कहें मोहम्मद भाई के बारे में, सारी दुनिया ने पता नहीं क्या क्या कहा। हम तो यही कहेंगे कि हमें फख्र था कि वो हमारे भाई थे। He was never a cousin, he was a brother. सभी भैया, मोहम्मद भाई, अहमद, सब एक ही थे और हमेशा रहेंगे। गवर्नमेंट सर्विस में और गवर्नमेंट मीटिंग्स में I was recognized by being the brother-in-law of Mr. Mahdi Masud. That was my recognition. अगर कभी गलती से किसी अदबी महफिल में पहुंच जाते थे तो वहाँ पे भी मेहदी मसूद साहब के आप कज़न हैं, बड़ी अच्छी बात है। तो हम बस इसी साए में काफ़ी साल हमने भी गुजार दिए, पता नहीं अब और कब तक। Thank you for asking me to say something to him, for him. I don't know what.
Hi Papajan, this is Zen, and I'm pretty sure you can hear me right now. I just wanted to tell you that, in life, we all get behind sometimes in our work. But I want to tell you specifically about this butcher who accidentally backed into his meat grinder and he got a little behind in his work. Papajan, you only leave me with the best memories of laughter and warmth. And I remember there was not a day that you didn't tell me about maybe 7 to 8 jokes on average. And love you and miss you lots.
Hi, this is Amna. I just wanted to add that your words of love and encouragement toward me after I wrote that article on the piece on Nile meant the world to me. We miss you.
if I recall correctly, the first time I met Mahdi Saab, I went to his residence to conduct an interview for a newspaper. I don't remember which one now, and I needed a quote from a former diplomat, former ambassador for that matter. And I remember walking in, and I was immediately struck because there's this immaculately dressed gentleman, with this perfectly knotted tie, this silk handkerchief, at the exact length coming out of the pocket. And for a second, and I realized, I'm not just in the presence of a person, I'm in the presence of a piece of history. And I automatically felt warm towards him because instantly he reminded me of my Nana and my Dada, primarily my Nana, which is the reason that I've chosen this background to do this this video, is because this is my Nana's library. And when I look at his pictures, and then when I saw Mahdi Saab, it was almost as if he was sitting in front of me, right down to the way they cross their legs and the perfect shine on their shoes. I mean, I have that memory in my mind like a picture. And and then later on, we sort of kept in touch, and we did some stuff for TV as well. And the news of his passing, it hit me because I realized that it wasn't so much the passing of one person. It was the passing of the idea of a Pakistan that was, So I think that when I mourn his loss, it's not just a person. It's the end of an era, because those were the last of the old school gentlemen, right? A piece of history, a piece of Pakistan that now we can only see in old photographs, in the history books, and in a longing for what was. And that was Mahdi Saab for me.
Ajam will always be a big part of me. I thank him for the friendship we shared, especially after Mummy, when his welcoming home became mine. For the times he'd wait for me to come home so we could eat together, the surprise visits, and my doctor's appointments, for the great company he'd give all of my friends. I thank him and Mummy for the privilege of being part of such a great family, for the love and pride I have for Pakistan, for the belief and confidence I have in myself, and the aspiration to do the right thing, to surround myself with the grateful and inspired like he did. My heart will always be full with the love that we shared. Ajam once wrote to me, "In you, God has blessed us with our hope for the future." I remember when he'd worry about little things and remind him of how much greatness he had achieved and how it was my turn to worry. He'd reply with a couple of lines by Robert Frost, with which I'd like to end. "But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. I do, and I hope I can make you proud. We miss you a lot, Ajam."
अब्बा जान के साथ हम लोगों ने बहुत ब्यूटीफुल टाइम गुजारा है इन आर डिफरेंट पोस्टिंग्स. आई वुड से स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम कुवैत व्हेन आई गॉट मैरिड, उसके बाद he went to Belgium and we were in Luxembourg, and then he went to Bonn. But from Luxembourg we were always driving down on weekends to meet Abba Jan and Mummy. And whenever my siblings were there, जब भी वो लोग होते थे, and उन लोगों की memories में अब्बा जान की जो एक light hearted and what good times they had spent with him, I think it's a pleasant memories. I would still think Abba Jan as a person, और उनकी generation के और लोग जो हम लोगों के लिए एक इंस्टीट्यूट थे. अब्बा जान जो थे वो आई थिंक ही वॉज अ ब्लेंड ऑफ हाई मॉरल वैल्यूज और बीइंग विद द टाइम्स, एंड आई थिंक सच पीपल I always look up to, as a role model in our lives. And I always pray कि हम लोगों के बच्चों को भी इस तरह के लोग उनकी lives में आए, and if not 100%, at least 70% can do. And अब्बू जान जहाँ भी हो वो हमेशा हमें उस वक्त देखें जब हम लोग बहुत खुश हों, and we really miss him a lot.
My Ajam was not just a loving grandfather to me, but he was a mentor and a companion. He was a rare individual. It's hard to find people who are so successful at what they do and have many other passions and so many loving relationships. And that was Ajam. He was an incredible grandfather. I fondly remember how we would sit together and he would speak on various topics and storytell. His vast wealth of knowledge was incredible. And of course, he had a love for poetry. I remember Candida by Bernard Shaw was one of his favorites. And other times we would just sit together. He would be reading a book and I would be on my laptop. And I remember once he put his book down and he said, "Bachi, what are you doing? Are you working?" And I said, "Yes, Ajam, I'm just doing some office work." And he was so proud. He had this huge grin on his face and a little twinkle in his eye. And I will never forget that expression. He always encouraged my sisters and I to be independent and be driven by our goals and be the best versions of ourselves. As we know, Ajam was Pakistan's biggest patriot. He was extremely loyal to the country, and I remember every time before leaving Pakistan, he would hold my hand tightly and he would say, "Bachi, remember to always keep our flag flying high no matter where you are." And I made sure to always remember that, and I always will. I'm a very proud Pakistani, and mainly because of him. And I hope one day that I can do something for the country too. I hope that we all continue to be inspired by Ajam and that we learn a little from him. Love you, Ajam.
It's impossible to recount the many beautiful moments that I spent with Uncle Mahdi Masud during the 15 years that I knew him. But one of those moments was on a sunny afternoon at his Creek Vista apartment, where he sat me down and talked about the letters, and he took out the letters that he had received post his detainment in Calcutta in 1971. And I just wanted to read out a couple of those letters because I'll never forget that moment and what it meant to Uncle, and then what it meant to me after learning about that. So there's one by Pakistan's ambassador to the Soviet Union at that time, Jamshed Markar. This is 17th August 1971. We have followed your recent fortunes with the greatest pride and are full of admiration for your coolness, courage and dedication to duty. Wish you continued success in your distinguished contribution to the cause of Pakistan. And there's a second one from the Director General of the Intelligence Bureau at that time, Nazir Ahmed. We have never met, but your name has become a legend with us. And I just wanted to also just recite a poem that comes to my mind when Uncle, when I think of Uncle and his work in the cause of Pakistan. It's a poem from Faz, which I'll just read a few shares from. किसको शिकवा है गर शौक़ के सिलसिले, हिजर की क़त्लगाहों से सब जा मिले, क़त्लगाहों से चुनकर हमारे अलम और निकलेंगे उशाक़ के काफ़िले, जिनकी राह तलब में हमारे कदम मुख्तसर कर चले दर्द के फासले, कर चले जिनकी खातिर जहांगीर हम जान गंवा कर तेरी दिलबरी का भरम.
Dear AJ, it's been 2 years since you've left us, and you've left a big hole in our hearts. Not only were you my grandfather, but you were also a best friend and a teacher. Every time going to Karachi was most exciting, being in your presence. You taught us an incredible amount. from history to family stories to our heritage to family values, and they'll always stay with us. I remember every time we would leave Karachi, you would tell us to forever hold our flag up high. And I feel that a reason that I'm so proud of where I come from is a lot to do with you. You were a true patriot and it really inspired me. And whenever anyone asks where I'm from, regardless of where the many countries I've lived in, I always proudly say from Pakistan. Your sense of humor was just the best. Your jokes were incredible. And that cute, cheeky grin you would have on when you'd share a cheeky joke with us will never be forgotten. I will always remember the time in 2016 as well, when I spent a couple months with you all alone. Our dinner dates were the cutest. We would go to your favorite place, Sanders, and we would share sweeties before dinner time at night because you loved your sweet stuff. And we would have endless conversations about everything. Always take my hand and say, I love you, Pyari. It was the cutest thing. And yeah, you were just the most incredible grandfather that we could have had, and you'll forever be in our hearts. You will forever be remembered because you were so impactful, and I truly wish we could have spent so many more years with you. Love you, AJ.
Adab Abbajan. Not a day goes by when I don't wish that you were still here and I could see your phone number flashing on my phone and you saying, hello बच्ची, अच्छा हमें बताएं आज मुस्तफ़ा ने क्या कहा, मुस्तफ़ा की और बातें बताएं. And you've left such a void, Abbajan, that I cannot really define that, but I want you to know that you are the reason for me having self-respect, because to have a father with that kind of integrity made me feel worthy, made me feel that it was worth it for good to come into my life, and I didn't have to compromise. And that wasn't always easy because, you know, you have lots of people in the family who love you, and in my single days, the conversation would be, bhai, Zebi ki shadi kab hogi? Kyun nahi? Long drawing room dialogues. But you had my back, Abbajan. I never felt pressured. I never felt dictated by you. You called me once and you said, Bachchi, all I want is for you to marry someone who's kind to you and respects you. And because I came from a father with such dignity, such honor, I feel that I felt I was worthy enough to wait for a very good man, and I did. And I'm so glad I did. Abbajan always had my back. He wanted what was good for not just his children and his grandchildren, but his entire family. I know that people have spoken about his patriotism and intellect, which is so great, but I don't know how many people know what a kind and tender father and grandparent he was. And it was such a happy home that I, for one, never ever wanted to leave. I remember being 5 years old and jumping on Mummy Abbajan's bed saying, 6 o'clock in the morning, saying कि मैंने एक poem लिखी है, love is a dove. And Abbajan clapping his hands and saying, अरे वाह बच्ची, ये तो बहुत अच्छी poem है. That was unconditional positive regard. And I continued to feel it all my life. Even when I was writing funny articles about him, he was the first to laugh and applaud and made me feel that, wow, you know, I did great, I did special things. And because of that, it's easy to avoid negative energy in your life because you feel you're worthwhile. You come from such a great place. You come from such great parents. I've never seen such unbending, incredible principles. And while sometimes that's not so easy for the family that surrounds him, in retrospect, it makes you feel very safe because, you know, you can hold your head up very high because you come from a father who did not compromise. When Mustafa was a baby and one of his nannies was walking to our house in Karachi and she got lost and she asked someone, Mahdi Masud saab ka ghar kahan hai? And the man pointed it out and he told the lady, "Aapko pata hai, Mahdi Masood साहब ने सिर्फ इज्जत कमाई है." And when he left us, there was peace on his face. He did not compromise on his principles. He loved his Pakistan, and he loved us. He was the best grandparent in the world. I think of him, I was thinking a few days ago that maybe he's standing at heaven's gate waiting for Choti Puppu, and slightly bent, he has his cane and she's in her wheelchair. But then I realized that no, in heaven he wouldn't have a cane, and Choti Puppu would not have a wheelchair, and he'd say, "Hello Akhtar," and she'd say, "Hello Bhaijan," and I hope they're all happy, because our lives are not the same, but Abbajan has left me with the greatest gift, and I hold my head up very high, very high. Extremely proud to be my father's daughter. Pakistan Zindabad.
Let me at the outset thank all of you for your lovely, often very moving messages for Abbajan. They are of course a reflection of how he touched your hearts. All that is left for me to do is to add some of my personal observations of the man. Abbajan was essentially a very simple person at heart. He found happiness in what we incorrectly call the smaller things in life, like good conversation, good company, good cup of tea, good book. Abbajan's work-life balance was very well structured. The term came in vogue after he retired, but he struck it very well. His daytime demeanor was very different from his later afternoon or evening one. During work, he was known to be very discreet, tight-lipped, conservative, but in his chill time, as we call it now, he was quite a different person. His practical jokes are well known, and he spent a lot of time with the family in the evenings, so he didn't let the work interfere with his personal life and vice versa. He also, of course, was a private man, even in his personal space. There were some things that he would keep to himself. He also needed his own space during the day, maybe just an hour, and he would typically be with himself and reminisce on the day gone by, normally by smiling and recounting some of the things. Abbajan was also, being a sensitive person, very conscious that he didn't rub anyone the wrong way, and naturally there were occasions when he did, and if he so felt that he was unfair to anyone, he would ensure that before the day ended, before he slept, he would sort of kiss and make up. So what typically would happen is that, and this could be to anyone in the immediate family, in the extended family, among friends, junior colleagues, or even domestic help, he would, after the event, talk to them, just small talk as to how they were, bring up subject. And if the person was in physical proximity, they would be typically tapped twice on the shoulder after he needed to, he said what he needed to, or on the head. And if a phone call was made, then after keeping the receiver down, he would tap it twice. Probably that was his way of showing closure. As Mummy used to say when she saw him sleeping, here sleeps a man with an absolutely clear conscience. And that's absolutely right too, because Abbajan was a sound sleeper. And he always slept very, very peacefully because he knew that he had made his peace if he needed to during the day. Abbajan achieved a lot during his career, as well as in his extracurricular pursuits, literary pursuits. A couple of things that were said about him by people who I hold in high esteem, I would like to mention. One is by the former Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Sahibzada Yaqub Ali Khan, who called him the best ambassador, best diplomatic report writing ambassador of his time. And just to remind everyone that at that time, during Abbajan's time, the diplomatic reports were extremely important. They still are, but their importance has been diluted to some extent because of the proliferation of electronic media, social media. At that time, the government fully relied on these reports. So the envoy's interaction with the government, with key people in industry, his observations and insights were given to the government through a diplomatic report, which is ciphered and sent through a diplomatic bag once a week. So that was the key role of an ambassador at that time. Of course, other than looking after community relations, Pakistan, being a developing country, depended a lot on take more than give, so foreign aid, trade, etc. So the correct insight from an envoy was very, very important. So a great compliment from Sahibzada Yaqub Ali Khan for Abbajan. And the other was from a recent conversation I had with Mr. Iftikhar Arif, very famous poet, and he said that according to him, in terms of yadasht and Zawq, he bracketed Abbajan along with Maulana Jamal Mia Farangi Mahal and Mr. Majid Ali, senior civil service officer and husband of poetess Zahra Nigar, as having being in the same bracket in terms of the Zawq and the yadasht and the memorization of quality and classical poetry. So I thought those were great compliments coming from great people. Abbajan had great passion for books. Everyone is aware of that. Even when he, because of failing health in his last couple of years, curtailed his outdoor activities, one thing he didn't leave till almost the last few weeks was his at least fortnightly visit to Liberty Bookstore. He was very possessive about his books, and the only specific instruction that he left behind for me and Zainab in his parting note, what was about his books, and that was that they should not be separated, they should be all kept together. And I'm recording this message in the midst of his books, in my house, behind me and in front, and it's great to be between them. Couple of incidents that he used to narrate, he was very fond of, and they reflect his skills, capabilities, and how he endeared himself to people. One is when the Turkish president, Mr. Jalal Bayar, visited Pakistan in February 1955. Abbajan was part of the protocol team of the Foreign Office assigned to the president, and Pakistan was playing India at the National Stadium. So there was a cricket match going on, and as soon as the Turkish president entered, there was an announcement, and it was accompanied by a ripple of applause. But fortunately, a couple of seconds later, Fazal Mahmood steamed in and clean bowled one down Polly Umriger. And of course, there was a deafening roar from the crowd. And Abbajan seized the opportunity, capitalized on it, and told the Turkish ambassador, the president, Excellency, this is how you are regarded among the people of Pakistan. This is how precious you are and how popular you are among us. So a lot of points were scored there. And the other incident that he used to mention fondly was in Amman, Jordan, his favorite posting. In 1975, coming back from a diplomatic function, and he took a lift from the Turkish ambassador because he had left his car for money to use. So coming back, Turkish ambassador got off earlier because his house was nearer, and asked his driver to drop Abidjan. So his driver, as is the custom, got off to take off the Turkish flag from the car, and he was reprimanded by the Turkish envoy that no, leave the car, we leave the flag on. Really doesn't make a difference if I'm sitting in the car or the Pakistani ambassadors. The Turkish flag will fly till Abidjan, till the Pakistani ambassador reaches home. So Abidjan, of course, was very touched, and this is a testament to the good relations between the two countries, but also a good reflection of how Abidjan, through his interactions, endeared himself to various people. Abidjan, needless to say, in his life achieved a lot of accolades, a lot of achievements to his credit. Received the Tamgha Pakistan as a junior officer, and then the Satara Khidmat after his Calcutta incarceration, 4-month incarceration, and many others, accolades and achievements. But I think what was most important for him was his honor, his good name, a clean image, untarnished name, and he left this world with that, with a very clean record and the cleanest possible name. And it's incumbent upon us, his children, Zainab and myself, and our children, and inshallah theirs, so on and so forth, to ensure that not only this, but all the values that he espoused and my mother espoused. In fact, my father's sisters and my uncles, my mamus and my khala, privileged to have been born in this family, and I at least consider myself, maybe others in the generation, a diluted form of our fathers and mothers. We were able to leverage their good name to our benefit, and we need to ensure that we leave behind an image, a name for our children and theirs, so that they can also benefit from it. There was just one grievance I had with Abidjan, and it was never really explained as to why he did it, and that was his enrolling me in an all-boys school in New York. Just imagine, of all places in New York, being enrolled in an all-boys school. And maybe the background to that is that he himself was, against his wishes, enrolled in either high school or college for a year and a half in Lucknow. Like I said, against his wishes. And the other was that his father, so my dada, was sent to boarding from the age of 5 till he graduated. So maybe with that in his mind, he sort of said that, okay, my son also needs to go through some rigors at least. One regret that I have, and I have to live with it, is although I did try to give as much time as I could to my father, in the last few years I was living in Dubai, earning my livelihood here, but I should have tried to give him even more time, quality time during his twilight years. So there's no harm in admitting that, and so I'll live with that regret. Like I said, I did go often from here, but I guess this regret will remain that I couldn't give even more time to him. He did live a very fulfilled life, a long life, mashallah, and Urdu में कहते हैं भरपूर जिंदगी, but still that there will be that regret. End of May, when we were planning this, I rang up my youngest Phupi, the now departed Choti Phupu, asking her to record a message for Bhajan. And she said, of course I will. And she mentioned that आजकल भाईजान बहुत याद आ रहे हैं. And then about 10-11 days after that, when I was going to call her to remind her, I got very sad news that she had passed away. And then I had her phone checked to see by people in Karachi whether she had recorded a message, and she hadn't. But I guess she maybe knew that there was no need to, because she was going to meet him herself very soon. In the end, I would like to just read a couplet, a sher that I had said on Bhajan's passing, and which is a befitting tribute to him, and that goes something like this: कि परचम बुलंद रखा सारे जहां में जिसने, परचम बुलंद रखा सारे जहां में जिसने, वो शख्स सर झुकाए सर उठाए हम सब में जी रहा है. फिर पढ़ता हूँ. परचम बुलंद रखा सारे जहां में जिसने, वो शख्स सर उठाए हम सब में जी रहा है. थैंक यू.
Decided that farewell function for myself during my diplomatic career, that friends meet in this world by chance, and the chance carries us together some portion of the way. And then comes a moment when we must part. Let us part with the hope that we part to meet again.